Okay, so let's move on to game five. In this game, we have playing Austria. We have David Miller, who is a pit kisser from Maryland, a longtime face-to-face player. In England, we have John Anderson, a player from Utah. In France, we have Hal Schild from Virginia. Germany, we have Weasel Christian Klein from the Chicago area. Italy is Kirk Vaughn from Tennessee. Russia is Nick Thompson from Virginia, and Turkey is Maxim Popov from Iowa, who's made a big splash in the virtual face-to-face circuit at the Boston Massacre. I believe he was in second place. Is that right, Randy?
Right. Yep.
And I think he did really well at Virtual Dixie as well, though I don't remember exactly how that ended up finishing. So, really, he's I understand a teenager from Iowa and has been playing online a bit, and we'll see how he does today. Any comments on any of the other players, Markus or Randy?
First thought, this is a pretty strong board.
Yeah.
Meaning no disrespect to the people I don't know, but David Miller, Christian Klein, and Maxim Popov are all very strong players. And for what I recall, John Anderson is as well. And I recognize the other names, so I would expect to see some fairly high-level play out of this board.
Great. Okay, so let's switch over to the map. And let's take it. What we'll do similar. We'll have Randy take the West, and why don't we get started? Randy, what do you see in the West in the opening?
Well, France forces its way into Burgundy, which is always if you're France, you're not sure what your neighbors are going to do. Never a bad move. Just force Burgundy and know you've got that locked down. England opens conservatively. I like that opening as England, opening to Yorkshire. So if France moves to the Channel, you can protect London, but you still got yourself opportunities for Norway and Belgium. Germany opens a little oddly, trying to go to Burgundy instead of Ruhr. So that may have been prearranged with France, and maybe he was nervous about Italy possibly moving to Tyrolia, and he wanted to make sure that he was still in Munich so he could protect it. But normally as Germany, you go to Ruhr, so you have at least some say over what happens with Belgium. Now that is solely between England and France what happens there. But he does put himself in Denmark, so he's got control over what happens with Sweden. And that's what I'm seeing right off the bat.
All right, Markus, what do you see in the East?
I mean, incredibly standard East. I feel like I saw this game earlier in the show,
and 1,000 times before.
Yep. Bouncing Galicia, bouncing Black Sea, everyone's opening completely standard. Italy setting up to convoy to Tunis. There's not a lot to talk about here.
All right, let's see what happens in the fall. All right, why don't you take it off, Markus?
Okay, well, the Italian convoy into Greece is an interesting one, with Austrian support, I believe. So that's clearly the Austrian wants him there. I'm not usually a fan of that, just because it traps the Austrian fleet behind when it could be used to push into Aegean, when the Italian army is only useful against Bulgaria or moving in against the Austrian. There's also some weird moves in the north. We see the Italian moving into Tyrolia in conjunction with the Austrian moving into Bohemia. Looks like this is some kind of AI attack on Germany. But I have a feeling it might convert itself into an Italian attack on the Austrian, because the Austrian has left himself very open here. Russia moving the fleet into Romania, anti-Turkish. It can't be used against the Austrian. And the Turk gets into Black Sea for free as a result. Turk not really committing anywhere with those hold orders. So still a lot to see from this. I think the Austrian, this Austria or Italy is going to be a solid trust thing, and they're going to go the distance and attack Germany, or it's going to collapse instantly with the Italian stabbing them right now.
All right, that'll be interesting to see. Let's move into the West. Anything unusual in the West, Randy?
I don't know about unusual. I see this as probably the beginnings of an EF, and I think Germany probably does too, which explains why you let Russia walk into Sweden. Normally, do you do that in Germany when you don't think you have an ally between E and F and you want Russia to be your friend? I wouldn't be shocked to see Russia build something on the North Coast or in St. Petersburg as a thank you to Germany for letting them take Sweden. England gets Belgium, which if you're England, you love that, obviously. With the army too, so a lot of flexibility there. That could be used to force Holland the next year, or depending on what England builds, could drop down to Picardy with a fleet in London down into the Channel. But given that France also got 2 builds, I would expect to see probably an army and a fleet out of both England and France, and then a coordinated move on Germany here. And if I'm Germany, I don't understand, and I don't like that Austrian move to Bohemia. That's not something you see very often, at least not in 1901, and it probably doesn't bode well for Germany.
Especially if you're thinking there might be an EF there, right? I mean, if you got an EF and then you've got Austria and Italy pinging around Munich, that's just bad news. They have to wonder from a strategic sense of the direction of the board if that's actually in Austria and Italy's interest to see Germany crumble and the West resolve quickly. But let's see how the builds play out. And it looks like interesting. We see 2 armies by France, and interesting that one of them is in Brest. Normally with France, you'd expect to see the second army show up in Marseille. But I guess it's a little bit more cover from the potential English fleet build in London. So England does indeed put down 2 fleets, which it's hard to predict what that means. It could be anti-French. It could be part of an EF, but maybe not making France feel so secure. Germany puts down 2 armies, so he's showing where he stands. He maybe expected France. Maybe there's something going on in the diplomacy that we're not seeing that led to this. But clearly, England is in the driver's seat. Maybe England's wishing he had another army right now, though. Russia does not build Fleet St. Pete, which is, again, huge for England, right? Just not having to worry about Russia up there. Russia, interestingly, builds the fleet in Sev, Turkey making the standard build, as well as Italy. What do you make of that fleet Sev build, Markus? Do you like it in this position?
I mean, it's very committing. It's saying, okay, I'm going against the Turk here. That you could potentially not go against the Turk, but then you've just built a useless unit and you're stuck with that useless unit forever. So I don't really like committing that hard, but if it was necessary, maybe it was necessary to get in on this Italy-Austria alliance, and Russia can start working their way into that, and maybe getting into Italy's ear and saying you need to stab Austria a bit later, then could be useful in that respect.
But is that what you want to be doing here? I mean, don't you want to be sending a message to Turkey? Hey, I want to work with you. I don't want to go against you. We can hold these guys up.
I mean, it depends. If you really want to see Turkey die quickly, then it's a great build, right? It depends how much you trust that the Austrian, the Italian will stick with you, especially the Austrian here, I guess, because ultimately Italy, Austria, Russia isn't a bad alliance for Russia necessarily if they can keep the other 2 on side, or if they can keep at least one of the other 2 on side. So it looks like Russia has just decided, okay, this Austria-Italy is happening. I'm joining in. I'm going to kill the Turk, and I'm hopefully going to come out with an ally on the other side, and it won't go too badly for me.
All right, let's see how that plays out. So looking at spring 1902. Okay, well, why don't we stay in the East? Markus, why don't you take it out?
Okay, interesting. So the Turk is backing out of the Black Sea into Constantinople, clearly just letting the Russian in there. And the Russian is helping the Turk here, supporting whole Bulgaria. So maybe the fleet build was just misdirection, or maybe the Turk managed to convince the Russian to help with the agreement that, okay, you can have Black Sea. It seems like a bit of a heavy sacrifice to make one of your units a fleet in the south that can't really advance against Austria here. So I would expect that they'll stab Turkey at some point soon, but yeah, it looks like Russia has flipped. Everything else looks fairly standard.
And here you see the exact. Sorry, Markus, go ahead.
Sorry, yeah, we do see the effect of not putting that fleet in Greece here, because Turkey manages to figure out which one is the correct thing to block, and Italy, Austria make 0 progress.
Yeah, it seems like there's a lot of units that are not in the most effective positions right now in that part of the board.
Yep, especially that if Russia is intending to continue the attack on Austria, Fleet Romania is not good at all. You ideally want to get that out of there, get an army. But well, maybe that's what they're intending to do now and use Black Sea to support hold Bulgaria instead.
Okay, let's move to the west. Randy, what do you see?
Well, it weren't the builds that I was expecting, but the moves are more or less predictable. This EF trying to take down Germany, and Germany parries very effectively, keeps them out of Ruhr, keeps them out of Helgoland. Not much you can do about the fleet coming down from Norway to Skagerrak, except he gets Russia to move the army up to St. Pete, which in coordination with the fleet in Sweden almost certainly won't take Norway, but at least almost certainly forces England to spend 2 units defending Norway, which means that Germany has a good chance here of hanging on for another year anyway. The Austrian drops armies into Silesia and Bohemia, which ordinarily, if you're Germany, you're concerned about, but given that Russia is also in Galicia, Austria almost certainly has to pull back to cover. So I would say from England and France's perspective, you're a little frustrated. None of your moves worked for all practical purposes. And if you're Germany, you're feeling hemmed in, but maybe certainly not dead yet.
Yeah, you got to hand it to Christian. Great defense right there. It's again really a little bit unclear what the Austrians are doing up in Silesia, but now in Silesia and Bohemia. Is that something against Russia? Is that something against Germany? And how's everybody feeling about that? But let's move on and take a look. And there we go. So let's stay in the West, Randy. Why don't you start?
Yeah, again, credit to Christian. He manages to keep Denmark because he gets Sweden to support him there, which is he is reaping the benefits of letting Russia into Sweden back in 2001. He keeps Denmark and he keeps France and England out of Ruhr again. So once again, Germany's not losing anything. He has frustrated England and France for a full year, and now his diplomacy has just got to be about trying to get one of them to turn on the other. And given the builds from last year, that would be trying to get England to turn on France. France is in no position to do anything to England. England has the flexibility to pick his enemies here. So that's what Christian Klein's got to work on there. Russia moves St. Pete over to Finland, possibly thinking he's going to get a build and throw something down in the north, or just moving that over to support Sweden to hold is also a good place for that army to be.
And it doesn't look like he's getting a build, right?
Yeah, it doesn't.
Okay. So and then in the east, Markus.
Yeah, looks like I think that Russian units in Romania are supporting Greece to Bulgaria, right?
Let's confirm that.
If that's the case, yep. Then Russia has switched sides, or at least is trying to appear to have switched sides, which would confirm. I guess that was why he built the fleet in the first place, and the whole support hold on Turkey was just a temporary thing. But then you wonder why Russia went Black Sea to Constantinople. Surely, well, maybe they just didn't know that Ankara was moving to Constantinople. Seems like the most likely reason. I guess it was just to cut support, right?
So yeah. They had two supports, so actually it wasn't necessary to do that. He could have made a play on Ankara instead, but maybe it's just a guess as to what Turkey might not cover.
It does look like Turkey supported the unit in Albania down to Greece, so maybe Russia knew that Turkey was trying to get the Austrian on side. Maybe Russia was thinking, okay, Turkey's been successful with that, I'll help the Italian. In which case the cutting Constantinople would make sense, but it's that's a lot of conjecture for a situation we'd really need to see the press to know about. Yeah.
What do you make of what the movement or non-movement in the middle of the board? I mean, if this is all signed up to do something against Munich, maybe ping on Warsaw, and ultimately it looks like Austria's back in a normal Austrian position in a moment.
Yeah, it's really nice for Austria getting back into Galicia, correctly guessing on that. Leaving Budapest undefended was was risky, but worked out perfectly. And I really like the Italian hold in Tyrolia. It makes that unit so flexible. You know, you could attack the Austrian if you want to. You could attack the German again if you want to. You could help the German if you want to. It's such a good unit there. Yeah.
Great. Let's move on to the show builds, and then we'll jump into the next game. So for our builds, It looks like there were just two builds: an Austrian build from taking Greece, which was an army, as in Budapest, which maybe seems logical given the flow of the game. The Italians get a build. So Italy, they took Tunis and they traded Greece for Bulgaria, so they're building another fleet, which again seems to be making sense given the flow towards Turkey in the game. And Markus, why don't you break this down for us?
Okay, so we're seeing the Austrian attack the Russian here, which is definitely deviating from the plan to attack Turkey, but also Austria supporting Italy into the Aegean Sea is going to break Turkey completely. So this is a pretty strong Austria-Italy alliance coming through. You've got France moving from mid-Atlantic to the Western Mediterranean and to Piedmont, which is a bit easy to counter. So I don't know that it's the best move, but it does slow down this, potentially slow down this attack on Turkey if Italy has to turn around. We've got England moving full force against St. Petersburg, which is going to work, I think, but it is going to be a fleet that goes in there, so that's not a huge problem for Russia going forward. And Germany just trying to hold out against this England-France alliance, and clearly keeping Russia on side in the north too.
It seems like this attack on Germany has been continuously ineffective in this game. And, it looks like England made the decision to go after Russia instead of going into Helgoland, where they really could have probably broken something up there.
Yeah, I think the Russian attack ends at St. Petersburg. It's not the most effective use of units.
Okay, why don't we go straight into the fall? And Randy, why don't you break this down for us?
Sure. Well, we've got England failing to take St. Petersburg because Russia decided that wasn't on board with that plan. Well, I'm sorry, England. No, I'm sorry, that's my mistake. England does take St. Petersburg. Barents walks in there, but he loses Norway.
And he takes Sweden.
And he takes Sweden. So net plus for England, but that Russian fleet in Norway is going to be obnoxious. England turns on France with German help. Keeps Belgium empty and throws an army into Burgundy, which is going to be of questionable effectiveness. Oddly enough, France chooses to disband that army rather than just retreat it to Paris or Marseille. So not really sure what France is planning there. Over in the east, we see Austria and Italy continue to coordinate, kicking Russia out of Romania. And Russia pulls back off of Turkey to go deal with his impending Austrian problem. Austria also picks up Warsaw. So Austria and Italy both are growing. Italy will be more than capable of dismissing the French threat here with that bill that he's getting.
So I think two things kind of stick out to me. One is in the West, the decision by England to turn on France and do it in a kind of a strange way, by just trying to attack Burgundy and not even no follow up into the English Channel or anything like that. And then in the East, the decision by Austria and Italy to really go more aggressively against Russia here than against Turkey. I mean, maybe there's not much gains to be made against Turkey from this position without Russians' help. But what do you make of those two kind of anomalies in this game, Markus?
Sorry, I was looking at the chat and at Doug saying that he might need to come on a bit earlier. So I was wondering whether we should do the games that he's involved with.
Okay, let's work through this one and then we'll jump into Doug's games.
Right. Sorry, so what exactly was the question here?
So we were talking about the decision of the English to make this kind of move on France rather than continuing the attack on Germany.
Well, I mean, the attack on the German has been pretty ineffective, although that's been in part due to the English moves here. I think it's fair. I think England could make a lot of progress here, but at the same time, they haven't moved to English Channel. They haven't really positioned correctly for it, so they could have probably done better by just continuing the attack against Germany and trying to position their units more effectively.
Okay, let's jump ahead and let's see the builds for 1904. So we see Russia disbands both northern units. I guess it's made a decision to focus on the south, which is probably reasonable given the circumstances. Italy puts a new fleet into Rome, making sense with the French position. Interestingly enough, France goes with Fleet Marseille. So we were talking about that disband, and it turns out that he's really going to double down on the South and hope that he can convince England to do something else, right? And England builds another army, which is suggestive, again, could be going north, could be going onto the continent.
Yeah, whether or not England moving into Burgundy was agreed upon with France, it's going to work out just fine for France because he can cover Paris and Gascony with his armies. And meanwhile, his fleets can get busy in the south, and England's army up at Edinburgh is probably aimed at retaking Norway, and England just secure his northern front.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. It could have been entirely subterfuge just to destroy that French army. So let's see what we get. Yep. Yeah, so it certainly looks like it. Go ahead, Randy. Why don't you break this one down?
Sure. England pulls back to Belgium, probably agreed upon with France. My guess is England and France are still working together, but they've decided they're not going to be able to crack Germany. So they're just going to they're going to kind of go their separate ways and leave Germany alone for now, which Christian seems happy to take that offer and just hold his stuff. Italy continues to pull the stuff back to defend, which he kind of has to do. One thing I want to mention here that I actually really like is how entangled Austria and Italy are. It really locks down their alliance. Neither one of them can effectively stab the other without causing just major problems because they're behind both of their respective lines. So I think even if the board dynamic wasn't kind of pushing them towards being allies, the way they've situated themselves in the Balkans, I think, is going to force them to be allied for quite some time yet.
Yeah, let's comment a little bit on the Balkans. Look at what that Romania army getting convoyed over the Black Sea by Russia after Italy basically just attacked Russia for Romania in the previous turn. Really, quite an interesting change of plan and probably great negotiations between the two of them to let something like that happen.
Yeah, I don't know if I love that for Italy. I mean, he can't protect Romania, and Russia's got two on it. And Romania can't. His army in Armenia can't do anything particularly effective unless he can't take Ankara. He can't take Smyrna. So I'm not sure if I like that move on Italy's part.
All right, let's go to the fall. And Markus, why don't you break it down?
All right, so we see Italy attempting to help Russia into the Turkish SC here, and I think did the Austria? Yeah, okay. So the Austrian units attempted to support Bulgaria into Con, but because of that Russian backstab, Italy's just lost everything here. They lost Romania as well. Austria trusted Russia. So I think that convoy was just a genius move by Russia last phase, getting all this trust and then getting back on the board. Obviously, still quite bad for Russia in the north. England putting armies into St. Petersburg and Norway. We've got Germany positioning on Sweden, which is interesting. I think they also moved into Belgium. Can't really see the arrow there.
It looks like that Germany managed. I think is that Germany taking Belgium? Let's go.
Yeah, I think so.
Let's put the
which
Belgium went up to Norway and Germany walked in.
Yeah, I would assume that given it's combined with the move to Baltic, that wasn't arranged, but there's always the possibility that it was. France obviously just continuing to batter at the Italian front, and maybe they'll make some progress now. Oh, they did make some progress in Tunis. So this is a really bad time for Italy.
What an absolute disaster that convoy was. Really outthought himself there.
Yep.
All right. Well, we got to assume that Armenia army is coming off now. Yeah, as well as the Tuscany fleet. And so Italy is down those 2 units, which he really needed that Tuscany fleet against France, man. That is going to be really just impossible to defend right now. France puts yet another fleet down. Really a devastating position. Germany builds an army in Berlin, suggesting that he's on board with this sort of delayed triple situation, and really his perseverance early in the game and keeping France and England out has paid off, and now he's actually really back in this game and could be a player. What do you guys think of the Austrian position here? Is that something that you're happy with, or too precarious?
It looks a little precarious at first, but a Turkish fleet in Bulgaria is better than a Turkish army in Bulgaria. So I think Austria can make a pitch to Russia and Turkey that, hey, we have to work together or this triple is just going to roll through us. I think Russia will buy that. I think Turkey might think, I can get a couple of dots off of Austria and before France gets over here.
Okay. Let's go on to the spring. And Markus, is it you up for breaking this down?
Boy, I can do.
Hold on, before you go on, let's just welcome Doug is going to join us. Great to have you again, Doug, and we'll just rotate through. Markus, go ahead.
All right, so we're going to see this massive combined effort from the east to put the Turkish army in Apulia, countering this French advance. Austria is not entirely trusting of the people on the in the east, clearly, especially not Russia, as he pulls everything back from that front, but clearly trying to get Turkey to either attack Italy or, well, probably defend Italy against the Frenchmen instead of going for him. Gives up Greece in the process. In the north, we see this massive pivot from England, and it looks like it's going to be successful, taking Brest, completely uncontested here, and setting up pretty well to go anti-France while France is so committed.
I love this move by England. I think this is fantastic. He's got himself a secure position in Russia. He's got a good shot at Moscow. That's all but guaranteed unless Russia and Austria get their stuff together. And he's got a guaranteed pick off of either France or Germany, whichever he wants. Although most likely it'll be Bray. So I think this is a great turn for England.
What a great pivot. And he's got the Italian in the Western Med as well. What a cool position. Go ahead, Markus.
Yeah. Convincing the Germans to move Denmark back as well is pretty huge. Even though he could counter that attack on Sweden, it just means he's got all the options. There's no one even trying to oppose him.
Markus, do you want to walk us through what happened in the fall?
Yeah, sure. So if I recall correctly, we just it looked like the Englishman was on side with the German before this phase, but now with the German move to Denmark and England going into Skagerrak and Baltic, it looks like that's unlikely to be the case. England obviously picking up Brest for free, that's great for them. If we look at the east here, Austria still pulling back towards the Russian, not trusting the Russian at all after the Russian, I think, stabbed them on the last turn, and helping the Turk get Romania, pulling the Turk out of Greece and helping attack Italy. Good for France, except for that Italian fleet behind them and the English fleet behind them and the German units in Burgundy. So good for France on the Italian front, bad for France everywhere else.
A total mess. A lot of movement and a lot of people attacking a lot of people this turn, and we've also got the Germans kicking Austria out of Warsaw. I mean, Austria's position isn't looking particularly good right now. Turkey sort of looks good, except that it looks like Russia's trying to move on him in Constantinople. So just a lot of things that need to be sorted out. And I would imagine that the upcoming negotiation phase was a lot of fun for everybody in this game.
I'm surprised Black Sea didn't head to Ankara there. It would have been a free center, but
that's true.
They decided Con was more important, or maybe they had an agreement to funnel it through Con and they got stabbed on that.
And thus goeth the Russian position. The last of the Russian remnants gets to make a final stand in Sèvres. The Austrians logically pull their fleet, whereas the Turks build another fleet in Caen. The French pull that army in North Africa that wasn't doing a lot of good. And the two English armies come down that spell very bad news for the French. And so let us move directly into the spring. And Siobhan, why don't you break it down? Let's see. I'm not getting a response on the map here. Okay, there we go. All right, thanks.
Alrighty, so jumping into spring, let me just say that is a lot of English fleets on the board. In the west, we've got a little shuffle around Brest, Mao, Spain to Gascony, which is interesting. Poor France. Yeah, pulling back to deal with the English and getting more Italian problems for their trouble as well, but the Italians now have to worry about the Austrian coming in from behind. So it looks like Turkey's setting up to take the last of the Russian dots, and otherwise we're going to see a marching of Italian and Turkish fleets through what was once French territory.
Okay, let's just push ahead. I will comment, Siobhan, you pointed out the preponderance, the large number of English fleets. Do you think this England's a little bit fleet heavy right now from where you want them to be? I mean, it seems like they've got a reason to have so many fleets. I mean, they are all getting moved around and they all are getting pushed, right? It's not like we have things that are just sitting around.
I think it makes perfect sense why he built the fleets where he did, and he is using all of them, thankfully, but I think in about a year he's going to really regret not having more armies.
Yeah. All right, Marcus, take us through the fall.
Yep. All right. So, well, first thing we see is the Turk getting pushed into Tunis here, which is great for them. I was actually half expecting the Turk to stab the Italian here with the Austrians' assistance, but clearly that didn't happen. Austria finally gets rid of that that French army that was hanging around in Bohemia. I don't even remember how that got there. But it's now...
I think it was in Vienna at one point.
Yep, it's now finally been blown up, and obviously France had the potential to retreat it to Galicia here, but decided I should probably be defending the supply centers I can keep. Great turn for Turkey, aside from obviously the English player propping up the Russian here, and you would expect Austria to tap Moscow if they wanted to help the Turk, but well, maybe they weren't expecting the English support, or maybe they just didn't want the Turk to grow more, which is fair. If we go to the west, we have Germany now supporting the Frenchmen against England, which was obviously the downside of attacking both at once. And Italy gets dislodged from Spain, retreats to Portugal, which is probably the safest place they could be right now. I don't see them getting dislodged from there anytime soon.
Yeah, and the English take Holland, so it looks like they'll be plus one, minus one, and same thing for the Germans. But the poor French are not going to be in such great shape after this turn. I think they're going down by quite a few, actually just one. So they'll remove that southern fleet, and the Germans will remove the Baltic and another Turkish fleet. And another Austrian army in Vienna, which is suggestive of where Austria is going now, and it looks like that's probably good for the AT alliance, I guess, at this stage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, Siobhan, go break it down.
All right, we've got a train of Austrian and Russian armies just marching west. Wow. Meanwhile, Turkey dots in for Serbia. Because why not?
And convoys to Albania.
And convoys to Albania.
That's a 2 to 3 dots. Greece is going down.
Greece is going down. We've got a supported attack on Trieste if we want it. Yikes. And Italy repositions everything with... Yes, an IT now. Oh, yeah. Meanwhile, up in the northwest, England continues to dot Germany only for one because he lost Holland in the process of taking Belgium. And yeah, Germany just repositions their armies to make sure that England gets as little as possible.
Is this a good play by Germany? By Turkey. I mean, this Turkish position just looks incredibly dominant right now on this board. He's basically he's in the Ionian Sea working with Italy. He's got the Italian dots in his pocket. He's got, not incredible position against Austria, but Austria is going to be pulling a couple this turn. I mean, is there any downside to what Turkey's doing here?
If there is, I don't see it in this moment. I think this is a spectacularly timed stab, and he's going to get 2 at least, if not 3, and with tons of room for growth. Yeah,
great play. Okay, Markus, comments on the fall.
All right. Well, we see that the Turkish attack continue. He needs to try and hold Romania, so he only ends up picking up the 2, but it's still a pretty strong stab here. Austria going -2, probably going to take those off of the front against the German and try and hold his own supply centers. Interestingly, I was about to say we don't see Italy getting involved in this, but it looks like Italy just had a complete NMR and didn't move at all, which is a bit of a shame. But I actually doubt it would have had much of an impact here, given that Marseille didn't get cut. Maybe, and given that the Turk pulled their fleet back to Tunis instead of attacking the Mid-Atlantic Ocean. If we go to the north, one more thing, we see England just walk into Sevastopol while the Russian tries to go for Romania. So I assume the Russian just at this point wins. Okay, you can have it. I'm content being last because that's probably what I'm going to be anyway. So England, really dominant position, manages to take Holland and hold Belgium and take Denmark. They do
and
lose
Brest.
the North Sea. Oh, they get Brest as well.
Probably 4.
Yeah, that's actually an insane turn. Holland was, it's +4.
Oh,
Pick up Belgium, pick up
12.
Brest, pick up Sev,
Wow.
pick up Denmark.
Going to 12. What a game for the witches.
Wow.
Yeah, I doubt this is going to result in a solo just because Moscow and Sevastopol are so difficult to hang on to if people unite, but it's still an incredible turn.
That's amazing.
Yeah, the only downside is that Germany is in the North Sea, but with the amount of builds that England is getting, it's not much of a downside.
Yeah, imagine that was a convoy to Holland instead of having to pull a fleet in, right? How cool would that position be, right?
Yeah.
Okay, let's just go straight to winter, and I guess England's going to have to sit with at least one in their pocket.
Yeah.
And it sits with 3.
England didn't build.
And neither did Turkey. Are we going to an end of the game here or something? This is
Got several years left.
I think that this is probably a draw. It looks like this is game 5. No, this goes to 1910. Why?
3 more years.
Why is nobody building here?
That has got to be a misorder. If anyone's watching who was in this game,
This is really hard to understand. Yeah, we'll have to get some more information on what happened here. Because we do see disbands by the Austrian and the German who are still in the game, but we don't see any builds whatsoever. This is really strange. Okay, so we'll have to just take that for what it is, and let's just move on to the next year. Obviously, there's absolutely no reason, if you're England or Turkey, here to not build. I mean, maybe you hold a build in your pocket if you're Turkey or England, but there's no way you're going to just sit and not build. There's too much at stake.
And there are some discounts even that. So it looks like that might have been an error with forced disbands, and the GM is pushing them through this year to reset. Or
the game really just ended there, and they just didn't get the draw
to stop the game.
They just didn't stop the game. All right, it looks like that was the game end there, and they agreed to a game end. Okay. Well, I mean that makes the adjustments a little more sensible.
Yeah.
What do we make of this? I mean, I'm just wondering if I'm in Turkey, do I want to end the game? I'm not sure. I think England certainly is probably pretty happy. It's maybe not a solo position, but on the other hand, I can get some more from a few more dots out of Germany out from this. So maybe I want to keep playing. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I think England was probably maxed out here. I think because of how heavy a fleet build they had, they were only going to ever get Kiel and Berlin, and they were going to lose Moscow and Sevastopol in the long run. So calling it on England's part, totally fine. Turkey maybe could have tried for a few more supply centers, but they're already in second. Carnage scoring, it's not a big difference, so I could see them doing fine. Honestly, I don't see a big reason by anyone to keep playing this game, despite the fact that it would be quite an interesting game to watch if it carried on.
Yeah. Okay, well, congratulations to John Anderson on a really impressive final turn in board top.